Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I am your host, John Espinosa. I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to listen to me today. If you like what you hear, please click on that subscribe button, share with your family and friends. It ultimately helps us meet the goal of getting others to where they are going. Today's topic is one of mindfulness, and that's our theme that we're focusing on for this season. Being a leader of one. When I go out and I talk to, whether it's the young leaders or even seasoned leaders, I make sure that it all starts with being a leader of one. And who is that one? That's you. That's yourself. You have to lead within before you can lead others. There's 4 things that we'll discuss in this podcast. This came about really this concept of leader of one when I was working in the restaurant business, and I was a cook. Well, I started as a busboy, but I came up through the ranks. I became a cook, and then eventually I worked in the back of the house. And I began to see this trend of take care of what you're doing, part of a team. You know, when I was salads, the salads had to get out before you got your meal. You never want a salad when you're getting your prime rib at the same time. So there was a sequence to things, and it was almost like an orchestra behind that line where tickets would print out. We would get the salads out, the appetizers out first, and then the main meal, and then any desserts. Well, throughout this process, I began to realize that I had to make sure I did my job, my singular job, in order for the team, the betterment of the team, which ultimately was customer on the other side, that they received a good experience when they came and ate at our restaurant. And this whole concept of leader of one began to conceptualize. And throughout my leadership journey, I've taken away some best practices. And this has changed a little bit, but I always preach to folks, you got to be a leader of one. So let's get into this thing today. The first thing that I want to talk about, and this is probably one of the most important, and that's why I put it up front. You have to figure out how to do the things that you don't want to do. I can't put it any simpler than that. There are things that we just don't want to do. I don't want to work out every day. Maybe eating well. There's times where I go to restaurants, or maybe I'm at a get together and there's plenty of food out there that I know I probably shouldn't eat. I've had high cholesterol, bad genes. I exercise. I try to do all the right things. So I know I need to stay away from certain foods, but I want to eat those foods because they're really, really good. It could be maybe chores or tasks that I have to do every day. Like, one thing I do not like to do is take minutes for meetings and record those minutes for meetings. I love to talk. I like to organize the meetings. I like to plan the agendas, but taking the minutes, I just don't want to do them. And you can probably think of several things in your life that you don't want to do. But in order to be a leader of one, we got to figure out how to do those things. So some tips and tricks, small changes. You've heard me talk about before, change things incrementally or add things to your routine in small increments. The example of getting up early. I had this goal that I was going to get up and have 30 minutes of mindfulness. I would get up an extra 30 minutes, regular time, and I didn't think that that was going to be such a big thing. I didn't want to do it. I love sleep. I really enjoy getting my sleep. So what did I start doing? Well, I started setting my alarm for 30 minutes. What did that do? That didn't help me do what I didn't want to do, which was get up earlier. What I found out was if I got up 5 minutes earlier or 10 minutes earlier, I think I did 10-minute increments, and I started week 1, I would get up 10 minutes earlier than I normally got up. Then the next week, I would get up 10 minutes earlier than that previous week. And then the next week, I would get up 10 minutes. So within 3 weeks, my body was adjusted to waking up 30 minutes. And that was the way that I figured out how to do what I didn't want to do, was wake up 30 minutes, because I programmed in my mind 10 minutes wasn't too bad. But over the course of 3 weeks, I was able to meet that goal of 30 minutes. Working out, same thing. I always think of the outcome of that session. I really just wasn't feeling like getting out there in the gym, and I put my gym in the garage during COVID, so I don't have an excuse that I got to get in a car and drive anywhere. But I wasn't feeling it today. I thought about my long-term goal, though, of my weight loss journey. I wanted to make sure my cardiovascular health, I have bad genes. I got to make sure that I keep that heart pumping and keep the blood flowing. You know, whatever you have to tell yourself to get the things done, that you don't want to do, you got to figure that out to be a leader of one. Another concept, I have several sayings that I tell myself, or triggers that I give myself, that allows me to elicit the good behavior or get past what I don't want to do. One of them is don't miss 2 days in a row. I can eat poorly one day, but don't eat poorly 2 days in a row, then go back to eating well. So there's things that you have to figure out your own. And for me, I can give people tips and tricks, but you know what motivates you, you know what keeps you going. So figure out how to get past the things that you don't want to do. The second thing is your critics. Everybody wants to give advice, and normally it's in the form of criticism. Why? Because it's easy to be a critic. It's easy to say it's not going to work. It's easy to say, well, are you an expert in that? When I was starting this podcast, well, what do you know about podcasts? I got that quite a bit. What do you know about YouTube? What do you know about this? What do you know about that? Or are you really going to do that? Do you have enough time to do that? Well, you don't know me. And a lot of times the people who are your biggest critics, they don't even have any knowledge of what you want to do. So how do we handle that? Well, one, don't let them dictate your actions. Don't let others dictate your actions. You are the one. If you don't do it, who is going to do it? If you don't change your behaviors, if you don't start on a new diet, or you don't get out there and exercise well, or you don't start that thing that you've had an idea up on your idea board. I got an idea board up here and a goal board that I keep, and I visualize things. I put pictures of things up there and I look at them. I come in my room and I look at them and I visualize them. If I listen to the critics, I'm not going to achieve those goals. Those are my goals. They're not their goals. So why are we listening to somebody else tell us that we're not going to get there, or we're not good enough? Or what are we thinking? You got to get past that point of listening to the critics. And sometimes they're the ones closest to you. Sometimes our biggest critics are the ones that are in our inner circles. And why? Because they see us changing, and maybe it's a fear of them not changing with us. Maybe they have a true concern about what we're doing. But for the most part, you have to block that out. You have to get past that in order to be a leader of one. Along with that comes the self-doubt, because if you begin to listen to your critics, guess what creeps in? Self-doubt, that imposter syndrome. And then that first time, the very first time that you mess up, or you do 2 cheat days in a row, whatever it is, there it comes. There it comes. Hey, John, I told you couldn't do this. I knew this diet wasn't right for you. It worked for Bill across the street, but I told you it wasn't going to work for you. You didn't get to the gym today. I told you that you weren't going to do it. I told you weren't going to get up 30 minutes easy and do your mindfulness. Those thoughts, the self-sabotage, the self-doubt creeps in. And guess what? We start to believe ourselves. The hardest thing for people to believe is that we lie to ourselves. Not everything that we tell ourselves is the truth. So you got to get past that self-doubt. And then fourth, but not least, I tell you, I hear this. I don't know how many times that I've heard this in my coaching sessions, my mentoring sessions, or just in my daily conversations with people when they ask what I'm doing and things like that is, well, I don't have enough time to do that. I don't have the time. I had a conversation with my 16-year-old today about chores, daily chores. I think it's a very good thing to give your kids daily chores. Creates habits, it creates behaviors, it shows them that if you do things consistently, you can build up. So his main conversation today was he wanted to go somewhere with his friends, and he didn't have the time to do his daily chores. So we had a conversation around prioritization. Time management, yeah, that's a concept, but I like talking about time prioritization. If it's not a priority, you're not going to make time for it. If working out is not a priority, you're not going to do it. If self-development isn't a priority, you're not going to do it. Whatever else you can think of, I'm sure there's many things in your life that you don't have time for. And that's okay. We only have a set amount of time in a day to get things done. But what I'm advocating for is if it's a priority, if it's a goal you want to meet, or it's a milestone that you're trying to get to, you have to make it a priority in order to dedicate time to it. So 4 things, just to recap here. Be a leader of one. You have to figure out how to do the things that you don't want to do. Number 2, can't listen to the critics. There's people out there, they're going to tell you that you can't do it, or they're going to ask you, what do you think you're doing? Some of them may be your inner circle. You got to tune that out. You got to stay laser focused and go achieve your goal. And then self-doubt, that imposter syndrome. Don't allow yourself to tell yourself lies. Make sure that, again, you're staying out there, you're staying open-minded. Our failures and my mistakes that I have made make me who I am today. And we have to remember that. We don't have to have it 100% figured out to move to action. So make sure that, the 60, 70% rule, if you want to follow that, go. Move to action. I always say do it messy. I'm doing this messy, and I'll continue to do things messy because it's action, and we're going to learn from those, take best practices, and continue to move forward. And then last but not least, to be a leader of one, it needs to be a priority. If things are not a priority, they're not going to get done. And if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So make sure to follow those 4 things. I promise you, mindfulness. If you're mindful about being a leader of one, you're going to be a good leader to everybody. You're going to be a leader that people come to get advice. You're going to be a leader that people want to be around. You're going to be a leader that puts others before your own needs and their interests before your own interests. You're going to make people feel as if they are seen, and you're going to be the most interested person in the rooms. I hope this helps somebody today. Go be great. We'll talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get others to where they're going.